Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Cup of Coffee, Episode 2. My name is Jake Brown, and I am here with Duncan Irvine, and we're going to talk some Pacific Northwest news. How you been doing, man?
I've been doing great. I'm really happy to be back again. Last week was awesome.
Yeah. First off, we were just talking about before we recorded Mark Few. If you have not seen the video, uh, he was arrested for a DUI last month, and the body cam footage has been released. Uh, right now, he's received a pre-season and 1 game suspension. Um,
It's kind of I was reading online. It said he was driving from his vacation house back to Spokane. He's got like his dogs in the car. It's just kind of a lot going on. And if you haven't seen the video, I definitely go check it out. It's interesting to say the least.
yeah, it was published by TMZ. So if you're curious what we're talking about, pause here, go watch that, come back here. What I thought about the video is that how combative he was, like how assured that he did not want, like he wanted to talk to his lawyer, but
That
it
was kind of I thought that part was kind of funny. I know this is like a serious matter, but that part was kind of hilarious. So he's talking about trying to call the lawyers and the cops like, "Sir, please put your phone away."
get your hands out of your pockets.
But he refused to do the sobriety test because he called him subjective. He blew a .119, so he definitely should not have been driving.
Yeah, I forgot to look up what what his blood alcohol level was, and yikes.
Yeah.
Um, no wonder he didn't want to take a test. Um,
Um, as far as on-court stuff goes, their first game against Dixie State. I don't think they really need to worry. Honestly, I mean, it was just Gonzaga giving him a slap on the wrist. So, depending on how you feel about that, it's a pretty light punishment, all things considered.
yeah, he's going into his 22nd year as Gonzaga's head coach. We were just talking about this as well. He's been head coach for as long as I've been alive and longer than you've been alive. So it's 36 years old when he was hired as head coach.
This is
Um,
one of those guys.
Speaking of Washington sports legends, Ken Griffey Jr. is going to be joining the ownership group for the Seattle Mariners. Duncan, what do you think of this?
I mean, obviously the M's have made a lot of really good steps recently, kind of getting back. They've got more wins last season than one of the World Series teams has, which is that's like never happened, I don't think. Obviously all that stuff with him going back to the Reds, whatever. I think he's kind of it shows he smoothed things out and he really is intent on getting back to Mariner baseball. And I think it's a really good sign for the team, as well as the city as a whole, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to be the guy who will never have to buy a drink in Seattle again. And known for all these incredible moments. And while he did get to go to Cincinnati because he wanted to be near where he lived, it's great that he's part of the ownership group. He says he's going to be a player focused ownership um, person, business person. I don't know what to call him. Uh, but yeah, I think the Mariners are just doing the right moves right now.
Yeah.
It's good to see them be competent for once.
Let's
Speaking,
hope.
but for teams that are incompetent right now, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. And Duncan, I'm going to have you take this one because I know you have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say about this game. I'm gonna try to keep it as PG rated as possible. Um, Honestly, I was kind of surprised with that whole, I guess it was the second drive that we had, the 84-yard touchdown to DK. That
Mhm.
was literally the highlight of the night. Nothing else good happened. Final score ended up, what was it, 13-10? It
13-10.
was, I mean, yeah, it was a disgusting game in every way, shape, and form. I don't really have much to say about kind of the individual game. Obviously, the defense played well, except stopping Alvin Kamara. He was kind of just all over the place, just destroying this team. I think there's a lot more that you can say about kind of the long-term future, what this means for the future of the Seahawks. I saw a lot of articles about Pete Carroll and what his future with the team is going to look like. I, for one, just going on the record, have been saying that the Seahawks need to part ways with him since the 2018 wild card game against the Cowboys. all of my concerns about his clock management, his play calling, and just his refusal to adapt to modern football are still prevalent, and he's not really done anything to fix them. And I'll spare everybody listening from me going on because we can make a full episode on this. I know we talked about it last week, but I just think I think it's time. And because the way I see it is if he doesn't leave at the end of the season, Russell is going to want to. And the Seahawks need to realize that Russell is a lot more important to this franchise than Carroll is, as demonstrated by the past 3 games.
Yeah, and it's not that Pete Carroll isn't going to be in the Hall of Fame as one of the best head coaches of the 2010s. I mean, won a Super Bowl, went to the Super Bowl the following year, had one of the best defenses in NFL history. I thought that extension last year was confusing because he's literally the oldest head coach in football. And we're already seeing all these old coaches, like not just Carroll, but Belichick as well, struggling when they don't have their star quarterback. So it just shows how much the NFL has changed.
Yeah, that extension last year kind of made me mad just because, like you said, regardless of his performance, he's like, what, 74, 75? Like, he's an old man at this point. And I appreciate Jody Allen looking for him to kind of continue to be the consistent kind of face of Seattle football, for lack of a better term. But at some point, you just got to realize that he's doing more harm than good.
Pete Carroll is 7 years old. He's not that old yet.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know. I know he acts a lot younger than he really is, but I thought he was a couple years older than that.
No, he is the oldest coach in the NFL. He turned 70 last month.
Wow.
Right as the season started. But he was a USC coach. He can go coach. I heard they have a head coaching job open.
Maybe he's interested.
Maybe that's where he wants to retire. But I want to talk next, go over to the Palouse and talk about Washington State. They lost to the other Cougars in Utah, BYU. And this game pretty much played out as expected. And Duncan, you said that your dad put money for BYU to cover.
Yeah, and I told him, I was like, maybe if you watch my podcast, you would know that I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. I told him I thought BYU money line was a better option, but he didn't listen to me. So you can only do so much.
Yeah, and I was at my college's sports network meeting this week, last Monday, and they said to not take Washington State for granted because ASU is playing Washington State this weekend. And it's a family rivalry. My parents both went to Wazoo, and I go to Arizona State. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But
yeah, as far as that game goes, I've seen nothing from Washington State this year that makes me think their defense could stop a middle school team. And I think ASU, obviously you've seen it, they've got a really high-powered offense. So I think ASU is going to roll, but that's just me.
It's all about the rushing game, and if ASU can, like, if Washington State can clamp down on ASU's running game, they'll have a chance to win. But ASU's defense is also one of, if not the best in the Pac-12.
They're really underrated on a national scale too. So
yeah, like I would say they're top 30 defense in the nation. And what do you have as a score prediction?
I said something like 42-28. I think it's going to be a lot of points scored between these teams, honestly, but you never know.
I don't think ASU is going to score that many points against Washington State. I think it's going to be more of, I gave my prediction this week, on Wednesday. I think I said 31-18 ASU wins.
Seems reasonable enough.
Yeah, it'll keep my parents quiet if that happens.
That's all that really matters.
Anyway, let's go up to Seattle again and talk about the purple and gold Huskies. They beat U of A out of the surprise of no one, and now they go and face an inconsistent Stanford team. And I just want to say, I believe my prediction last week was 20-17, and it was a little bit off. It was 21-16, but I got the closest out of any of our predictions.
I'll give you that one. No, but for this
Anyway.
game, like you said, it wasn't really a surprise. They handled Arizona. Quite frankly, if you don't handle Arizona, something's wrong. Dylan Morris went 13 for 21, which I talked about in the last episode. His completion percentage has been something that's kind of been a concern, and that's 13 to 21 is right along close to 60%, which he's for the year. Sam Heward only got one attempt, which I thought they were going to bring him in more. So I'm pretty sure that attempt was pretty early on. I didn't get to watch the second half of the game. But just overall, I don't think Washington's offense is good enough to keep up with Stanford. And as inconsistent as Stanford's been, I think they're just the better overall team.
Yeah, and Washington, I know Stanford's offense isn't that good either, or their defense is that good. I just don't think Washington just doesn't make sense to me. And like 60% completion percentage isn't great, but it's fine for college for like a fringe starter. I mean, DTR has that same completion percentage. And
Difference is he's really good.
Yeah, the difference that he's really good. He can do any he can pass the deep ball and run around, avoid pressure. Washington cannot. But going to the Stanford game, what do you think is a final score prediction for this game?
Both these teams can't seem to get anything going on offense, so I'm inclined to say something like 24-17, but I could see it being something 17-10, 17-13, Stanford winning.
Yeah, that was going to be my score prediction, with Stanford winning 17-10. I just think Stanford is they're better on paper. They're just like, they're the same team that beat Oregon, but at the same time, they get shelled against ASU.
Yeah, we
So
haven't really seen a complete game aside from the Oregon one. And even that game was ugly at times, but we haven't seen them put it all together yet.
Stanford plays one half and then they just don't show up. Sometimes only one quarter.
Too much.
Or not at all. But we brought up Oregon. Oregon now ranked number 7, scraped by UCLA, who we just brought up, and now they go and face one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 in Colorado. I'm going to have you take this one, Duncan.
Yeah, so going back to the UCLA game, it kind of went how I expected it to. Obviously, I said Oregon was going to score 31. I didn't think UCLA was going to keep it as close as they did. But honestly, I was a little bit surprised. UCLA got up 14-0, and they just couldn't hold on. Again, kind of some of the themes we talked about. Anthony Brown didn't really play well. He threw 2 picks, didn't throw a single touchdown. I think the biggest storyline from that game is that Travis Dye broke an NCAA record with 4 touchdowns on 4 straight carries.
That's insane.
As far as this upcoming game goes, this is like going to be a really big statement game for Oregon. They, like we're talking about with Stanford, they haven't really put it all together. Aside from the Ohio State game, haven't really put it all together. Colorado being one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, they really just kind of need to dominate them to prove to the College Football Playoff Committee that they deserve to be mentioned with the likes of Oklahoma, Georgia, Ohio State.
Yeah, and Oregon, they go out and beat Ohio State, and then the very next week they go and lose to Stanford, and then they almost choke against Cal. If I'm a college football playoff ranker, I have to see Oregon destroy Colorado like 58-0 if I even want to consider them for a playoff spot.
Yeah, they need to do a little bit more convincing to get themselves kind of mentioned back up in that top tier of teams.
Mm-hmm. And Oregon has that potential. They just need, I think, specifically their offense to stay consistent. Their defense has been all right, sometimes messy at times, but it's college. It's going to be messy.
Yeah. And quite frankly, we expected their defense to be good. I think people expected a little bit more of the offense, and they just haven't lived up to expectations so far.
Yeah. Speaking of, well, before we go to Oregon State, do you have a score prediction for this?
It should be something like 42-14 Oregon, but I think Colorado's going to keep it close, and it's going to be something like 42-35 Oregon winning ultimately.
Yeah, I think Oregon's going to come out hot and score. I think it's going to be like 35-10 at half. And then by final, it'll be something like 42-28. Like
Yeah, I
I'll
agree
just
with that.
score 18 points out of nowhere. Colorado will. But Oregon's going to win this. I would be shocked if Colorado won. But going over to Oregon State, they beat Utah after Utah came off a victory against Arizona State, scoring 28 points in a row. And now Oregon State faces the worst team in the Pac-12, and that is Cal. Even though this is the same Cal team that almost upset Oregon, OSU is continuing to be a surprise team of the Pac-12. They should win this game, of course, because it's Cal. And it's going to be, Duncan, you put here, it's going to be a barometer of how good they're going to match up against Oregon.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how many conclusions we can draw from the Oregon Cal game, just because I do think that Oregon was playing down to the level of their competition. I definitely think Oregon State has a shot at beating Oregon again this year, but I'm gonna be interested. They really just need to keep taking care of business until they get to that the Civil War, or whatever they're calling it now, that last week of the season.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be one of the best matchups between the two Oregon schools in a while, because it's been a while since Oregon State has really been competitive in football. So
Yeah, it's been a good 8 years now, or something like that. I can't remember. I want to say it was 2013 was the last time they're really in any type of competition mode, but
because
it's definitely been a while.
every time, at least for the past near decade, like you said, it seemed like Oregon was blowing out Oregon State every single year. Obviously, last time they faced each other was not that. And I think it's going to be close, but of course, that game's not for another month or so. So,
It'll be here before we know it, though.
yep, it'll be here. By this point, it's going to be Thanksgiving and all the games, the college rivalry games will be playing. So, um, do you have a final score of this game?
Yeah, I think Oregon State's going to take care of business. I think they're motivated now. They know how good they can be. So I think this game will be something like 28-14, Oregon State winning.
Nice. I got um I want to say it will be a blowout. I'm going to say it's going to be 38-10. Yes, 38-10. That's my final. All right. And that's it for college football. Let's move on to the NBA because the Trailblazers surprised us a little bit. Duncan, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, they kind of have not been good since we talked about them last week. They've beaten the Suns, which is kind of a surprise, but then they lost to the Clippers and the Grizzlies. They have another game against the Clippers tonight. So that'll be a good mark to see how they've improved or what they've done, adjustments they've made. The big story kind of been his Damian Lillard is really not playing how he usually is. He's shooting 33% from the field this year. He hasn't been the leading scorer in any singular game they played. CJ McCollum has had to step up and kind of fill that role. Just to put it short and simple, Damian Lillard needs to play better if they want to win any number of games and have any expectations of making the playoffs. Not to say he's played badly so far, but he needs to maintain that level that he's been at.
Yeah, and I saw a tweet by Dame yesterday, and it was something along the lines of like it's only been a few games, but because all these players go through these kind of cold streaks, I guess when you're as successful as Damian Lillard has been the last 9-10 years, it's streaks like this are out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and like it's obviously just been a couple games, but you want me to talk about it, so I'm going to give you my overreactions. But I don't know if he's trying to play his way into another team or what is going on, but he needs to get it together.
Yeah, and I mean that game against the Suns too. Suns have been really disappointing, but we're not a Phoenix sports podcast. We're Pacific Northwest. But I'm still kind of surprised that let's see here. They beat the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies went out and beat the Golden State Warriors yesterday too, which was
Yeah, I think that game said more about the Grizzlies than the Trailblazers. They were just kind of playing off, but Ja Moran has been really good this year. So I think
Ja
they're a team
Morant
that can go
scampering
far.
away from Draymond Green though. that video is hilarious. It would have been upsetting if he had stepped out of bounds under that net.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to hockey. So the Seattle Kraken, they are cooking right now. Brandon Tanev, I think I called him Brian Tanev last time, and that was my mistake. He is right now the NHL's leading scorer as of recording. And right now, the Seattle Kraken are just outside of a playoff spot, even though it's only been 8 games. They have 7 points in total in the standings. They've won the last 2 games against the Minnesota Wild in a statement win 4-1, and then another statement win at home 5-1. Philip Grubauer has been outstanding as of late, and just goes to show that it's the season's only just getting started. So
Yeah, it's
early,
funny how much of a point we made that last week about how bad he's been. And now he's turned it
yeah,
back on.
and now he's only allowed 1 goal per game since. They did drop the game against Vancouver in their first home game, but ever since they have been on a roll. They play the New York Rangers on Sunday on Halloween, and then they go on to a road trip to Edmonton, who has been the best team in the Pacific, and then go face some really bad teams in the Buffalo Sabres, and here to Arizona on November 6th, which I will be attending that game in my Kraken stuff. So that's what's going on in Seattle. Over in the Vancouver Canucks, I have already stated that they beat the Seattle Kraken just about a week ago. Recently, they have dropped the last 2 games by close range. They dropped against the Wild at home, 3-2, and against the Philadelphia Flyers, only scored a point, losing 2-1. So very close games they have been in recently after either getting blown out or playing close or blowing teams out. Right now, they are tied with the Seattle Kraken, 1 point out of a playoff spot, against which the Sharks hold that last spot with 8 points. So pretty much that's what's going on in Pacific Northwest hockey between the Vancouver Canucks and the Seattle Kraken. They also have the exact same record, so the points differential is obviously the same. So that's what's going on. What are the key games to look at this weekend? We have the Seahawks playing the Jags this weekend. What are we looking at this weekend?
Yeah, like you said, that one's gonna be big. I think it's gonna say a lot. I'm very interested to see. There's a sick and twisted part of me that wants to see what Seahawks Twitter is gonna be like if they do end up losing that game.
Oh.
But obviously, I don't think that'll happen. I don't hope that'll happen. But yeah, that's gonna be a mess. I think the Washington State Arizona State game is really interesting for a number of reasons. I'm looking forward to it just to because I know obviously your family rivalry. So I'm interested to see how that ends up going for you. And I can't wait to hear about either your parents' sadness or your parents' I guess happiness, depending on how that game goes next week.
Oh, I'm more worried about my sadness or happiness because I want the bragging rights. I don't think they want the bragging rights as much as I do. But there was a photo of me on Facebook that popped up in my memories. It was a throwback photo my dad posted 6 years ago, and it was all three of us at I think it was in Pullman with in all of our Cougar stuff, seeing a Cougar game. And I
Of
said
course,
I
it's
traded
just in time for this game.
and and I said I'm trading in that I'm trading in the crimson for maroon, but it is a blackout this weekend. So
Should be
and,
exciting.
and the jerseys look sick.
I haven't seen him yet. Let me go check. Actually, I may have seen. I want to say I've seen these on Twitter.
Yeah, it was all over Twitter yesterday.
Yeah, I will say y'all probably have the most underrated uniform combinations of any team in the country. To be honest, people
I
kind of
think
forget about y'all.
I think they're the best in the nation, to be honest.
It's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim, but I mean, have you seen those jerseys though? Last week
It
against Utah would have been my least favorite jerseys, or not last week, 2 weeks ago, against Utah were my least favorite jerseys. But these ones are really cool.
Yeah, I think even your least favorite jerseys and the worst jerseys y'all have are still better than the majority of the rest of college footballs.
Yeah, but University of Maryland, they have really cool jerseys too. That's just because I'm from Maryland and I love the flag.
Yeah, they're interesting for sure.
Yes. Um, so I think that's going to wrap it up here at the Cup of Coffee podcast for episode dos. We'll see y'all next week. This is a lot shorter one. I want them to be a little bit more like this. So
Thanks for listening.
yeah, thank you for listening, y'all, and we'll see you next week.